For 3 years, Samuel loved his wife Anita with everything he had, until the day he woke up from surgery and heard her standing outside his hospital room, laughing with another man about which flowers to put on his casket. He wasn't supposed to survive the emergency appendectomy. The infection had spread faster than anyone expected. But as Samuel lay there in that hospital bed, barely conscious, unable to move or speak, he heard every single word. And what he heard made him wish the surgery had actually killed him. Anita's voice drifted through the partially open door, light and carefree in a way he hadn't heard in months. "I was thinking white lilies," she said. "They photograph well, and we want the funeral to look dignified." A man's voice responded, smooth, familiar. "Whatever you want, baby. Just make it quick so we can finally be together." Samuel's heart monitor should have exploded right then. That voice belonged to Derek, his best friend since college, his business partner, the man who'd been his best man at their wedding. "The life insurance policy is $2 million, Anita continued, her tone as casual as if she were discussing groceries. "Once everything clears, we can buy that house in Costa Rica you showed me. Start fresh where nobody knows us." Samuel wanted to scream. He wanted to rip the IV from his arm and storm into that hallway, but his body wouldn't respond. The anesthesia still had him paralyzed, trapped in his own flesh, forced to listen as his wife and his best friend planned their future on top of his grave. "What if he pulls through?" Derek asked, and Samuel heard the concern in his voice. Anita laughed, actually laughed. "The doctor said it's unlikely. The sepsis was severe. And even if he does wake up, he'll be weak for months. We'll figure something out." "We'll figure something out." Those 4 words cut deeper than any surgeon's blade. But before we continue with this beautiful story, please kindly subscribe to this channel and tell me where you are watching from. And also share below, what life or relationship challenge are you facing right now? Or what's someone you know going through? Don't forget to like this video as well. All these mean a lot to us. Samuel had met Anita at a charity gala 5 years ago. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep, beautiful and confident, and he'd fallen for her immediately. She said she loved his kindness, his ambition, his loyalty. She said she'd never met anyone like him. They got married after a year of dating, and Samuel thought he'd found his forever. Derek had been there through it all. He'd helped Samuel pick out the engagement ring. He'd given a tearful speech at the wedding about brotherhood and love. He'd been Uncle Derek to the children Samuel and Anita had talked about having someday. And now these 2 people, the 2 people Samuel trusted most in the world, were counting down the hours until his death. "I should get back in there," Anita said, her voice shifting to something softer, sadder. "Got to play the devoted wife for the nurses." "You're a hell of an actress," Derek replied, and Samuel heard the sound of a kiss. Footsteps approached. Samuel closed his eyes, his mind racing even as his body remained still. Anita entered the room, and he felt her hand on his forehead. Cool, gentle, a perfect imitation of concern. "Oh, Samuel," she whispered, and her voice cracked just right. "Please come back to me." If he hadn't just heard the truth, he would have believed her completely. The next hours blurred together. Nurses came and went. Doctors checked his vitals. Anita sat beside his bed, scrolling through her phone, occasionally sighing dramatically when staff members were present. Samuel pretended to sleep, his mind working through everything he'd heard. $2 million. That's what his life was worth to her. The life insurance policy he'd taken out when they got married, the one she'd insisted he increase last year. "We need to protect our future," she'd said. He thought she was being practical. Now he knew better. He thought about the last few months. Anita had been distant, cold. She blamed stress from work. She said she was tired. She suggested Samuel work longer hours at the company he and Derek had built together. "You two need to focus on growth," she'd said. "I'll be fine." She'd been fine, all right. Fine enough to plan his funeral while he was still breathing. Around midnight, a nurse came in for routine checks. She was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and efficient hands. Her name tag read, Patricia. "You're awake," she said quietly, noticing his eyes tracking her movements. Samuel tried to speak, but only a croak came out. "Don't strain yourself," Patricia said, adjusting his IV. "The anesthesia is wearing off, but you're still weak. You gave everyone quite a scare." She checked his vitals, made notes on her tablet, then paused. She looked at Anita, asleep in the chair beside his bed, then back at Samuel. Something shifted in her expression. "I need to tell you something," Patricia whispered, leaning close. "But you need to stay calm. Can you do that?" Samuel managed a small nod. "I've been a nurse for 37 years, she said. "I've seen a lot of things, and what I've seen today doesn't sit right with me." His heart rate picked up slightly on the monitor. "Your wife," Patricia continued, her voice barely audible. "She's been making phone calls, meeting with a man in the hallway. I've heard things that concern me deeply." Samuel's eyes widened. She knew. "I don't have proof," Patricia said, "but I trust my instincts, and my instincts say you're in danger. The kind of danger that doesn't end when you leave this hospital." She straightened up, speaking in a normal voice. "Your recovery is progressing well, Mr. Chen. Better than expected, actually. The doctor will be pleased." Anita stirred in her chair but didn't wake. Patricia looked at Samuel one more time, her eyes full of meaning. "Sometimes," she said quietly, "the best thing a person can do is let others think they're weaker than they really are. Do you understand?" Samuel understood perfectly. The next morning, Samuel continued his act. He groaned weakly when the doctor examined him. He barely squeezed Anita's hand when she held it for the medical team's benefit. He let his voice come out raspy and confused when he tried to speak. "The infection did more damage than we initially thought," the doctor told Anita, his face grave. "His recovery will be long and difficult, months possibly." Anita's face showed perfect concern, but Samuel saw it, the tiny flash of relief in her eyes. "I'll take care of him," she promised, her hand on Samuel's shoulder. "Whatever he needs." If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, "I am enjoying this story," below. Derek visited that afternoon, playing his role just as well as Anita played hers. He brought flowers, ironic, considering the conversation Samuel had overheard. He stood at the foot of the bed, his face arranged in worried lines. "Buddy," Derek said, his voice thick with fake emotion, "you scared the hell out of us. We thought we'd lost you." Samuel let his eyes flutter, let his hands shake as he reached toward his friend. Derek took it, squeezed it, and Samuel felt nothing but disgust. "Anita's been a wreck," Derek continued, glancing at her. "She hasn't left your side." "I can't lose him," Anita said, and actual tears rolled down her cheeks. "He's my everything." They were so good at this, so practiced. Samuel wondered how long they'd been planning it. Had they been together before the surgery? Had they somehow known about the appendicitis? Or had they simply seized an opportunity when it presented itself? Over the next 3 days, Samuel played dead man walking. He was weak, confused, barely able to feed himself. The nurses fussed over him. Anita maintained her vigil, leaving only when Derek or her sister came to spell her. But Samuel was watching, learning, planning. He noticed how Anita's phone was always face down, how she stepped into the hallway for certain calls, how Derek visited at the same time every day, right when Anita took her lunch break, and how they'd both disappear for exactly 45 minutes. He noticed the life insurance documents Anita brought for him to review, claiming his lawyer had sent them. "Just checking that everything's in order," she'd said sweetly, "in case anything happens." He noticed Patricia, the night nurse, who checked on him more frequently than necessary, who always seemed to arrive when Anita stepped out, who left small notes under his water pitcher, notes that said things like, "Your phone records can be subpoenaed," and "Security cameras in hallways," and "Trust no one." Patricia was helping him. This stranger, this nurse who owed him nothing, had decided to protect him. On the 4th night, when Anita had finally gone home to shower and change clothes, Patricia came in with his medications. "You're stronger than you're letting on," she said simply. Samuel dropped the act. "How did you know?" "Your grip strength when you think no one's watching. The way your eyes track movements. The fact that your cognitive responses are sharp despite your performance." She smiled. "I told you, 37 years. I know the difference between a sick patient and a smart one. Why are you helping me? Patricia's smile faded. Because 20 years ago, someone tried to do to my sister what your wife is planning. Nobody believed her. Nobody helped her. She barely survived. She set down the medication tray. I'm not making that mistake again. What do I do? You get well, Patricia said firmly. You document everything, and you stay alive long enough to make sure justice is served. She pulled out her phone. I've been recording their hallway conversations when I can. It's not admissible in court, hospital policy violations, but it might help you understand what you're dealing with. She played a recording. Anita's voice, crystal clear. Once he's home and off all the monitoring equipment, it'll be easier. A relapse, something stress-induced. The doctor already said his system is fragile. Derek's response. And you're sure you can handle it emotionally, watching him deteriorate? Anita laughed, that same cold laugh Samuel had heard that first day. Baby, I've been faking love for 2 years. I can fake grief just as easily. 2 years. They'd been together for 2 years. Samuel looked at Patricia, this angel in scrubs who'd appeared exactly when he needed her. How do I repay you for this? You survive, she said simply, and you make sure they don't do this to anyone else. The next morning, the doctor declared Samuel stable enough for discharge within a week. Anita beamed with joy, squeezed his hand, promised him she'd set up the perfect recovery space at home. And Samuel smiled back weakly, playing his part, even as his mind worked on a plan that would turn their scheme inside out. Because Anita and Derek had made one critical mistake. They assumed Samuel was the same trusting, naive man who'd gone into surgery 5 days ago. But that man had died on the operating table. The man who survived was someone entirely different. The ride home from the hospital felt like a funeral procession, except Samuel was the corpse who could see everything. Anita had transformed their bedroom into what looked like a recovery suite. New pillows, a bed tray, medications organized in a weekly dispenser. To anyone else, it would look like devotion. To Samuel, it looked like a stage set for Act 2 of her plan. I've taken a leave from work, Anita announced, fluffing pillows behind him. I want to focus completely on your recovery. Of course she had. She needed to be here to monitor his relapse. Derek showed up that evening with dinner. Homemade soup, he claimed, though Samuel recognized the containers from their favorite restaurant. His best friend sat at the foot of the bed, talking about the business, about clients, about everything except the truth. Don't worry about work, Derek said. I've got everything handled. You just focus on getting better. Getting better. Right. That was definitely what they wanted. Over the next week, Samuel played his role perfectly. He was weak, grateful, trusting. He took his medications from Anita's hand. He ate the meals she prepared. He thanked her constantly for her sacrifice. And every moment, he was gathering evidence. Patricia had given him a burner phone before discharge, tucked into his hospital bag. For emergencies, she'd whispered. Samuel used it to photograph everything. The medication labels, Anita's phone when she left it unattended, the life insurance documents she kept reviewing, the suspicious texts that appeared when she thought he was sleeping. He'd also called his lawyer, not the family lawyer Anita knew about, but his old college roommate Jake, who practiced corporate law 2 states away. Someone Anita had never met, someone she couldn't possibly know he'd contacted. I need everything documented without anyone knowing, Samuel had told him during a whispered call while Anita was in the shower. Bank accounts, insurance policies, phone records, everything. Jesus, Samuel, are you sure about this? I heard them planning my funeral, Jake, I'm sure. The evidence Jake uncovered was damning. Anita had opened a secret credit card 6 months ago. Derek had purchased tickets to Costa Rica, departure date 2 months away. They'd been renting an apartment together across town since last spring. Anita's phone records showed hundreds of calls and texts to Derek, many of them during hours she'd claimed to be at work conferences or visiting her mother. But the worst discovery came from the medication Anita was giving him. Samuel had been secretly spitting out the pills, hiding them in a tissue, collecting them. He sent them to Jake, who had them analyzed by a private lab. The results made his blood run cold. The antibiotics Anita claimed the doctor prescribed weren't antibiotics at all. They were blood thinners, massive doses, far beyond any therapeutic level. Combined with the actual medications he was supposed to be taking for his recovery, they created a deadly cocktail. The lab report was clear. Continued use would likely cause internal bleeding, stroke, or heart attack within weeks, and given his recent medical crisis, no one would question it. Anita wasn't just waiting for him to die naturally. She was helping it along. If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, "I am enjoying this story," below. The realization hit Samuel like a physical blow. This woman he'd loved, who he'd built a life with, who he'd treated with everything, she was actively poisoning him. And Derek, his brother in everything but blood, was complicit in murder. That night Samuel made his decision. He wasn't just going to expose them. He was going to dismantle their entire plan, piece by piece, until they were left with nothing but consequences. He started small. During the day, when Anita went to the grocery store or pharmacy, Samuel forced himself out of bed. His body was actually recovering well. He'd been healthy before the appendicitis, and the surgery itself had been successful. The weakness was mostly an act now, though his muscles had atrophied slightly from the hospital stay. He searched the house methodically. In Anita's closet, hidden in a shoebox, he found burner phones filled with texts to Derek. Plans, timelines, discussions about money. Screenshots of his life insurance policy with the payout amount highlighted. A notebook with handwritten notes about his symptoms, his medications, his schedule, all documented with the precision of someone planning a crime. In Derek's text messages on one of the phones, Samuel found something that made him see red. "Can't wait until this is over and we can be together openly. I'm tired of pretending to be his friend. You're the only one I've ever really loved." Anita's response: "Just a little longer, baby. He's getting weaker every day. The pills are working perfectly. Doctor said his blood work is concerning. He thinks it's complications from the infection. Nobody suspects a thing." Samuel photographed everything, uploaded it to a secure cloud account Jake had set up, and put everything back exactly as he'd found it. The next phase of his plan required help. He reached out to 3 people: Jake, his lawyer; Patricia, the nurse who'd saved his life; and his younger sister, Rebecca, who lived in Seattle and whom Anita had always kept at arm's length. "She never liked me around," Rebecca said during their secret phone call. "Now I know why. She didn't want anyone who actually knew you well watching too closely." Rebecca flew in quietly, staying at a hotel, meeting Samuel only when Anita was out. She brought a private investigator she'd hired, a former FBI agent named Carol Chen, who specialized in domestic cases. "We need to be smart about this," Carol advised during their meeting at her office, while Anita thought Samuel was at a follow-up doctor's appointment. "If we expose them too early, they might wiggle out of the serious charges. We need documentation of intent, of action, of conspiracy. We need them to incriminate themselves beyond any doubt." "What do you suggest?" Samuel asked. Carol smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "We let them think they're winning, and we record everything." Over the next 2 weeks, Samuel's home became a surveillance operation. Tiny cameras in the bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, all hidden, all recording. Audio devices that captured every conversation. Carol had gotten a warrant through a friendly judge, based on the evidence Samuel had already gathered, making it all admissible in court. Meanwhile, Samuel continued to deteriorate on schedule. He complained of dizziness, of headaches, of weakness. Anita would look concerned, take his temperature, give him his medication, and then text Derek. "He's getting worse. Won't be long now." The hardest part was watching Derek. His former best friend would visit, would sit beside his bed, would talk about old times, college pranks, their first business deal, the camping trip where they'd gotten hopelessly lost and had to be rescued by park rangers. "Remember when you said we'd always have each other's backs?" Derek said one evening, his hand on Samuel's shoulder. That's still true, man. Always will be. Samuel wanted to vomit. Instead, he squeezed Derek's hand weakly. Brothers, he managed to rasp. Brothers, Derek repeated, and then left to meet Anita in the guest room. They didn't know about the camera there, where they had sex while discussing how much longer they had to wait. I can't do this much longer, Anita moaned, though whether from pleasure or frustration, Samuel couldn't tell. I hate touching him. I hate pretending. Just a little more, Derek soothed her. His blood work next week should show critical levels. The doctor will probably hospitalize him. And then we'll let nature take its course, Anita finished. Just like we planned. Samuel watched the footage later that night, alone in his office, and felt something inside him crystallize into cold, hard resolve. These people had stolen his trust, his love, his money, and nearly his life. They'd turned his home into a crime scene and his marriage into a murder plot. They deserved everything that was coming. The next doctor's appointment was crucial. Samuel had secretly visited his real doctor, the one treating him, not the one Anita claimed to speak to, and explained everything. Dr. Patel had been horrified. I never prescribe blood thinners, he'd said, reviewing Samuel's actual chart. And these dosages, this could kill you. This is attempted murder. I know, Samuel had replied, and I need you to play along for just a little longer. So when Samuel went for his appointment with Anita beside him, Dr. Patel performed his role perfectly. He frowned at the blood work Anita had brought from the lab she'd claimed Samuel visited. He looked grave. He spoke in serious tones about concerning levels and possible complications. I'm afraid we may need to readmit you, Dr. Patel told Samuel, while Anita's face showed perfect worry and hidden triumph. These numbers indicate a serious problem with your clotting factors. It could be a delayed reaction to the infection, or possibly an issue with your liver function. What does that mean? Anita asked, her hand tight on Samuel's arm. It means we need to monitor him closely. Sometimes these post-surgical complications can be unpredictable, even dangerous. Dr. Patel met Samuel's eyes briefly. I want to see you back here in 3 days. If things worsen before then, go to the emergency room immediately. In the car, Anita was quiet, too quiet. Samuel could practically hear her thoughts racing. 3 days wasn't long. 3 days until he'd be back in a hospital, monitored, harder to access. If something was going to happen, it would need to happen soon. That night, Samuel pretended to sleep while Anita made phone calls from the bathroom. The audio surveillance picked up every word. We can't wait, she hissed to Derek. 3 days and he's back in the hospital. If they run real tests, they might find the drugs in his system. What do you want to do? Derek sounded nervous. Accelerate the timeline. Tomorrow night. I'll give him a higher dose. He'll have a medical crisis. I'll call 911. And by the time the ambulance arrives. Have you sure? We're out of options. It has to be tomorrow. Samuel lay in the dark, listening to his wife plan his murder for the following evening, and he smiled. Because tomorrow wasn't just any day. Tomorrow, Carol's team would be positioned. The police would be on standby. Every camera would be recording. And everyone Samuel had told about Anita and Derek's plan would be watching, ready to act. Tomorrow, Anita and Derek would make their final move. And tomorrow, Samuel would rise from the grave they dug for him and drag them both down into it instead. The day dawned bright and clear, mockingly beautiful for what Samuel knew was supposed to be his last day alive. Anita made him breakfast, oatmeal with berries, orange juice, and his medication. She was extra attentive, extra loving, her performance flawless. I'm so glad we have this day together, she said, kissing his forehead. Just the two of us. Samuel smiled weakly. Me too. What Anita didn't know, Carol and her team were parked in a van 2 blocks away, monitoring every camera feed. Jake was at the police station with a prosecutor who'd been briefed on everything. Rebecca was at a hotel with copies of all the evidence, ready to go public if anything went wrong. And Dr. Patel had Samuel's real medication ready at the hospital, just in case. Derek came by at noon, as planned. Samuel watched the two of them from his bed, saw the meaningful glances they exchanged, the way their hands brushed when Anita handed Derek a drink. They thought they were being subtle. They had no idea they'd been caught weeks ago. "I brought lunch," Derek announced, carrying bags from Samuel's favorite deli. "Figured we could all eat together. Like old times." Like old times, before they'd decided to kill him. They ate in the bedroom, Anita propped on one side of Samuel, Derek sitting in the chair beside the bed. They talked about nothing: weather, sports, a movie Derek had seen, normal conversation, friendly, warm, completely hollow. After lunch, Derek left. "Got a meeting with a client," he said, "but I'll check on you later, buddy." Samuel knew Derek would be back at 8 p.m. The cameras in the guest room had recorded them planning it. Derek would arrive with wine, something to celebrate, though Samuel wouldn't be alive to know what. Anita would give Samuel his evening medication, the fatal dose. Within an hour, he'd start showing symptoms. She'd wait until those symptoms became critical before calling 911, ensuring maximum damage before help arrived. The afternoon crawled by. Anita stayed close, attentive, occasionally checking her phone. Samuel pretended to sleep, pretending to be weak, all while his heart raced with anticipation. At 7 p.m., Anita helped him to the bathroom, then back to bed. She fluffed his pillows, adjusted his blankets, brought him water. "How are you feeling?" she asked, and her concern sounded so genuine. "Tired," Samuel said. "Really tired." "That's okay. Rest. I'll wake you for your evening medication." Evening medication. The kill shot. At 7:50, Samuel heard Derek's car in the driveway, right on schedule. He heard the front door open, heard Anita's delighted greeting, heard them in the kitchen, their voices low and excited. At 8 p.m. exactly, Anita came into the bedroom with a glass of water and a small medicine cup filled with pills. More pills than usual. The fatal dose. "Time for your medication, honey," she said sweetly. Samuel struggled to sit up, playing his part. He reached for the pills with shaking hands, and then he stopped. He looked at Anita, really looked at her. Her beautiful face, her concerned expression, her lying eyes. "I can't do this anymore," he said clearly, his voice suddenly strong. Anita blinked. "Samuel? Are you okay? You sound—" "I sound like someone who isn't dying," Samuel interrupted. "Because I'm not dying, Anita. I never was." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about? You're not making sense." "The infection. The infection was real. The surgery was real. My recovery was real." Samuel swung his legs out of bed, standing for the first time in weeks without pretending to struggle. "What wasn't real was my continued illness. What wasn't real was your devotion. What wasn't real was our entire marriage, apparently." "Samuel, you're confused. The medication. You mean the blood thinners?" Samuel held up the medicine cup. "The massive doses you've been giving me for weeks, trying to cause a fatal hemorrhage. Those medications." If you're enjoying this story so far, pause and comment, "I am enjoying this story," below. Anita stumbled backward. "I don't know what you're talking about. Those are antibiotics. The doctor, Dr. Patel never prescribed these. I had them analyzed, Anita. I know exactly what they are, just like I know about Derek, about Costa Rica, about the life insurance policy, about all of it." Derek appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Samuel, buddy, I think you're having some kind of episode. The stress. The stress of hearing my wife and my best friend plan my funeral while I was in a hospital bed." Samuel's voice was cold, controlled. "The stress of listening to you discuss how to murder me for insurance money. That kind of stress?" The silence that followed was deafening. Anita and Derek looked at each other, then back at Samuel. He could see them calculating, trying to figure out how much he knew, how much he could prove. "You can't prove anything," Anita finally said, her voice hardening. "You're just paranoid. Sick. People will think. People will think exactly what the evidence shows them," Samuel interrupted. "And there's a lot of evidence, Anita. Weeks of it. Audio recordings of your conversations, video of you and Derek together, the burner phones, the fake medications, the financial records, the tickets to Costa Rica, your notebook documenting my symptoms like a science experiment." Derek moved toward the door, but Samuel shook his head. I wouldn't. The house is surrounded. Police are outside. They've been listening to everything. They're just waiting for my signal. As if on cue, Samuel's phone buzzed. A text from Carol. We have everything we need. Give the word. Samuel looked at the two people who'd tried to kill him. Anita, his wife of 3 years, who'd shared his bed while planning his death. Derek, his best friend of 15 years, who'd betrayed him for money and a woman. Why? Samuel asked, and his voice finally cracked. I loved you both. I would have given you anything. Why did it have to be this way? Anita laughed, sharp and bitter. Because you're boring, Samuel. You're kind and decent and boring. Derek makes me feel alive, and your life insurance made our future possible. It was nothing personal. Nothing personal, Samuel repeated. You were poisoning me, Anita. How is that nothing personal? You were a means to an end, Derek said, finding his voice. We didn't want to hurt you. We just wanted. You wanted my money and your freedom, and you were willing to commit murder to get it. Samuel pulled out his phone. I just have one question before I call the police in. Did you ever love me? Either of you? Was any of it real? Anita and Derek looked at each other. In that moment, Samuel saw the truth. They loved each other. Maybe they'd fallen for each other slowly, or maybe it had been instant. But their love was real. Their love had just cost Samuel everything. No, Anita said finally, her voice quiet. I'm sorry, but no. I thought I could learn to love you. You were safe, stable, successful. But I never felt for you what I feel for Derek. It was the truth Samuel had known was coming, but it still hurt. 3 years of his life, built on a lie. Thank you for finally being honest, Samuel said. Then he pressed send on the text to Carol. Come in. Within seconds, the front door burst open. Police officers flooded the house, led by Carol and 2 detectives. Anita and Derek were read their rights, handcuffed, their faces showing shock and disbelief as they realized Samuel had outplayed them completely. You recorded us? Anita screamed as they led her away. That's illegal. You can't use that in court. Actually, Detective Morrison said, with a warrant and probable cause, we can. And Mr. Chen provided plenty of both. You should have been more careful about where you had your conversations. Derek didn't say anything. He just looked at Samuel, his former best friend, with something that might have been regret or might have been anger. Samuel couldn't tell, and he found he didn't care. As the police cars pulled away, Rebecca emerged from the house next door, where she'd been watching everything. She ran to Samuel and hugged him tightly. It's over, she whispered. It's finally over. But it wasn't, not quite. The trial took 6 months to prepare. During that time, the media had a field day. Husband fakes illness to catch killer wife, ran one headline. Best friend betrayal ends in murder plot, announced another. Samuel's face was everywhere, along with Anita's and Derek's. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the medications, the financial records, the testimony from Patricia, Dr. Patel, and the lab technicians. Anita and Derek's lawyers tried to claim entrapment, coercion, Samuel's mental instability. Nothing stuck. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Samuel testified for 2 days, walking the jury through every moment, from waking up after surgery to hearing Anita and Derek plan his funeral, to the weeks of gathering evidence while pretending to die. They turned my home into a crime scene, Samuel said from the witness stand. They turned my marriage into a murder plot, and they did it all while looking me in the eye and telling me they loved me. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Anita was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. She got 25 years to life. Derek was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. He got 20 years. As the verdicts were read, Anita cried. Derek sat stone-faced. Neither of them looked at Samuel. After the trial, Samuel's life slowly returned to normal, or a new version of normal. He sold the house, too many bad memories. He restructured the business, buying out Derek's shares, bringing in new partners he actually trusted. He went to therapy, working through the trauma of betrayal. Patricia, the nurse who'd saved his life, became a close friend. I just did what was right, she insisted whenever Samuel thanked her. But Samuel knew better. She'd risked her job, her reputation, to save a stranger. That was more than right. That was heroic. A year after the trial, Samuel met someone new. Her name was Elena, and she was an architect. They met at a coffee shop when she accidentally took his order. They laughed about it, talked for an hour, and Samuel felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. I should tell you, Samuel said on their third date. I have some baggage, a lot of it. My ex-wife tried to kill me. Elena had read the news stories. Everyone had. But she looked at Samuel with clear, honest eyes and said, everyone has a past. What matters is what you do with your future. They took it slow. Samuel was cautious, guarded, afraid to trust. But Elena was patient. She didn't push. She let Samuel set the pace. And slowly, carefully, Samuel learned to love again. 2 years after his near death, Samuel stood in Patricia's hospital cafeteria, the same hospital where everything had changed. He was there for a charity event, raising money for patient advocacy programs that would help other people recognize the warning signs of abuse, manipulation, or harm. You've come a long way, Patricia said, appearing beside him with coffee. I had good help, Samuel replied. You saved my life, Patricia. Not just physically. You gave me a chance to save myself. You did the hard part, she said. You survived. You fought back. You didn't let them win. Samuel thought about Anita and Derek in their separate prisons, living with the consequences of their choices. He thought about the life they'd tried to steal from him, and he thought about the life he was building now. Honest, open, real. No, Samuel agreed. I didn't let them win. That evening, Samuel went home to the new apartment he shared with Elena. It was smaller than the house he'd had with Anita, but it was filled with light and laughter and truth. Elena was cooking dinner, singing off-key to the radio, and she smiled when Samuel walked in. Good day, she asked. Good day, Samuel confirmed. And it was, because he was alive. He was free. He was loved by someone who actually meant it. Anita and Derek had tried to bury him, but instead, they'd buried themselves. Samuel had survived. More than that, he'd thrived. Sometimes, when Samuel couldn't sleep, he thought about that moment in the hospital when he'd heard Anita and Derek planning his funeral. He thought about how close he'd come to dying, how easy it would have been to just slip away. But he'd fought. He'd endured. He'd outsmarted the people who thought he was weak. And in the end, Samuel had learned the most important lesson of all. Trust is earned, love is precious, and survival is the best revenge. 3 years after everything happened, Samuel got a letter from Anita. She was up for parole review, unlikely to get it, but she was trying. The letter was full of apologies, explanations, justifications. She claimed she'd been manipulated by Derek. She said she'd never stopped loving Samuel. She begged for forgiveness. Samuel read the letter once, then fed it through the shredder. Some things don't deserve a response. Elena found him in his office afterward, staring out the window. You okay? She asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. I'm perfect, Samuel said, and he meant it. Because he was alive, he was loved, and he was free. And Anita was exactly where she deserved to be. Samuel had won. Not through revenge, not through hatred, but through something much simpler. He'd survived. He'd told the truth. And he'd refused to let betrayal destroy him. That was the sweetest victory of all.